It's an example of how when we just keep showing up, we can make the change we are all dreaming about. So thank you all for coming today, and I couldn't agree more with the way Kimberly framed it, that while we are in the traditional panel setting of us here and you there, we know that each woman and man in the room, you hold the leadership. That's the paradigm shift we need to make. It's no longer about the top-down, knowing where we're going. It's really about moving to a collective, collaborative, cooperative process and set of relationships. I want to just say that there is a sense of momentum. I don't know if everybody here feels it. That move, change, it's happening everywhere. We may be a somewhat small group in this room, but there are millions right now, millions of people, men and women, gathering like this, gathering in larger groups and smaller groups, trying to figure out how we re-engineer the world we have created. And I went last night to an amazing exhibit at MoMA that I recommend everybody go to. The artist, her work, Sanja Ivakovic, who is from Croatia, and it's a retrospective of her work from the 1970s until now. And she does this amazing mix of looking at images of women in contemporary media, but then she puts in the words of real women right underneath, among other things. But it's very powerful. And at the Modern Museum of Art, when you walk in, these big stately marbled halls all over the floor are crumpled up pieces of red paper. And the crumpled up piece of paper is about Cedaw. And it's about her point. We had a tour by the curator of the show, and she said she's making the point by crumpling this up that the policy direction that was articulated in Cedaw and created by the forged work of so many women and the women before us in this room is still too far out of reach. So when you walk around, you can pick up, it's also a dynamic museum show, you can pick up, you're allowed to pick up a piece of this paper. And I think what's so important about this gathering and the creation of UN Women is that we are still reaching. Even though it is out of reach, we are still reaching. That's what we're doing here today. I want to talk just a little bit about what we mean, giving language to what we mean when we say New World, which we have in our subtitle, because I think that language is a big part of what we need to do. I was talking to Bell Hooks recently, because she'll be coming to our Women in Power conference in the fall, and she said, so much of this is about the lack of language. We don't have the words to say fully enough, richly enough, to create these new pathways of power. So I want to talk a little bit about that, reflect on what does power have to do with peace, and why women's leadership in every sphere of our lives, in our home lives, in our work lives, in our spiritual religious communities, in our economies, why this matters. Technology is creating something very interesting for us. Three very important things that are helping to fuel and feed this new wave of the women's movement globally. First, it is allowing us to aggregate data, which gives us the chance to see in a comprehensive way the conditions and the patterns of women's experiences all over the world. And video allows us to see it in real time. We can and have to bear witness to what is going on with women and girls and men and boys and nature and the planet all around the world. And second, like the consciousness raising groups that took place in the 1960s and the 70s, predominantly starting here in the US but spreading to other parts of the world, where women would come together in small groups doing all kinds of things like examining themselves with speculums and looking in the mirror and saying, oh, let me look at my body, let me share my isolation with you, let me share my experience, do you feel like this? did this in small groups, technology is now allowing us to create the largest consciousness-raising group the planet has ever seen. And the capacity to be in this large circle and to not only share the struggles, but to share the success stories that allow us to cheer each other on, to affirm, to say yes, to go further, keep going, I see you. This is something amazing that technology is giving us. And when we look at this aggregate picture, as everybody knows, the statistics are very grim. They are still so grim about what is happening to women and girls right here in this city and all over the world. The conditions of suffering and abuse, the lack of opportunity, the bearing of the burdens of responsibility, caring for children, caring for our elders, growing our food, and huge gaps still in positional power in every sector. Huge gaps in wealth. Too few women still holding decision-making authority. And the picture for boys and men is also grim. And we have to, as a matter of language and relations, begin integrating these pictures of what this world is like for boys and men who, at the worst, are taught to be brutal and to kill, and at best are shut off from half of the realm of human experience, which is about nurturing and loving and raising children and being tender with themselves and with others. And as we said, at the same time that all of this grim picture is going on, I heard Nicholas Kristof recently, somebody asked Nicholas Kristof, how do you bear writing about these stories? How can you bear it? And he said, you know, I can bear it because sitting side by side, the incredible darkness is a light in humanity that's like no other. And we in the West have not been tested in many ways that other people have been tested to rise up, to rise over. And he said that's how he can bear it. It feeds him, it keeps him inspired. So we too can live in that light of inspiration. And the main shift that I believe we're all clamoring for is to move the human story from a story of fear, aggression, territory, scarcity, into the new world, which is more healed and just and free and driving on love. In this new world, and this is what we need to keep doing, all of us all the time, giving the language, well, what would it look like really? Women and girls would be valued for their full human potential. They would live in safety and freedom. They would be able to express themselves and contribute meaningfully in all spheres of life. Men and boys would be free to express the full range of their human qualities. And they would share equitably in life's responsibilities, at home, at work, and in the world. And collectively, the United Nations, the global community, would be fostering what every human being is longing for, which is a peaceful and just and sustainable world where we share our resources equitably, we solve our conflicts without violence, we live with a sense of bounty and fulfillment, and we do this without plundering the world's resources. How do we get there? There's so many steps, there's so many paths, and most fundamentally we need a shift in human consciousness. We need to change how we understand our relationships to each other, to animals, to nature, to land, to notions of security, and to what makes us happy. This shift of consciousness is a shift from fear and its corollaries of defensiveness and domination to love and its corollaries of compassion and cooperation. It is a shift from feeling disconnected to each other to knowing that we are all interconnected. Whatever we call it, it's a unity principle recognized in almost every spiritual, religious tradition. Leadership should not be an imitation art to do what has always been done. Women have the opportunity to lead humanity in a new direction. It's time to say that power should be used to work and build a world that works for everybody. As playwright and activist Eve Ensler says, a new kind of power would be used in the service of, to lift others, to help and make whole. We need to be the storytellers. We have to tell the stories of where we've come, what's happening now, and what the vision of the future is. Our adaptive relationship to power has rendered so much of our vocabulary and so much of what we say to be inauthentic, because we've had to assimilate to a power structure created without us. We've learned to say yes when we mean no. We've learned not to shout out when we are in horror. We have learned to ingratiate ourselves to advance, and we have learned to laugh when it is not funny. And laughter is important, but we need to unearth our authentic voice and express it fully. We need to create a new narrative of what is possible for humanity. Brick by brick, piece by piece, person by person, country by country, we need to do the long, hard work of creating new pathways to power, the healing work, the economic innovations, the policy changes, changing how we eat, how we shop, how we fight, how we care for our sick, how we educate our young, how we share, how we dream, and how we hold together what is possible. And women need to lead the world in a new way of being with each other. And as Omega Institute co-founder Elizabeth Lesser says, we need to take love out of the closet and bring it along for the power ride. And we're doing that. Thank you.